needless to say, the steps to taking a great idea and making it into a great movie are myriad, and there are so many places along the way that everything can go oh so horribly wrong. Like with these movies released over the past year, which all had great premises, but largely failed to stick the landing. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture, and here are 10 recent movies that wasted amazing concepts. Number 10. Haunted Swimming Pool, Night Swim. The first major theatrical release of 2024, Night Swim certainly rocked an attention-grabbing premise. What if the swimming pool in your new home was haunted? With the movie being developed by James Wan's production company Atomic Monster, a campy tone in the vein of Malignant or M3gan should have been a no-brainer. Yet filmmaker Bryce Maguire instead gave the movie all the solemnity of an A24 joint. Beyond that, this is duller than any movie about a killer swimming pool should ever be possible of being. And because it's saddled with a restrictive PG-13 rating, there aren't even any amusingly OTT death scenes to savor. Night Swim could have been a bonkers way to kick off the year, but it has so few fresh ideas and such little ambition that it's instead near instantly forgotten. Number 9. A bear goes on a coke-fueled rampage. Cocaine Bear. The moment that a film about a cocaine-huffing bear going on a drug-induced rampage in the American wilderness was announced, and one very loosely based on true events, no less, it was tough not to be intrigued. The marketing for the shrewdly titled Cocaine Bear promised an absolutely ridiculous R-rated romp where a hard-partying bear rips any human it comes across limb from limb. And really, that's all it ever needed to be. And yet, there's a baffling tameness to Elizabeth Banks' film which kind of undercuts its scuzzy, edgy potential. Beyond focusing far too much on the uninteresting human characters, especially a pair of children we know for a fact aren't ever coming to real harm, the script seems almost unafraid to indulge in the grisly schlock most people allured by the title Cocaine Bear were surely looking for. It kind of feels like a studio exec heard the original pitch and then immediately planed the edges away, resulting in a sanitized, not gnarly enough end product that's bloated out with tedious human subplots and doesn't feature nearly enough bear-based carnage. Cocaine Bear should have been an extremely nasty and mean-spirited horror comedy about what happens when large animals accidentally ingest copious amounts of nose powder. Instead, it ended up feeling like a movie that couldn't stop pointing out how crazy and meme-worthy it all was. Number 8. Indy does time travel. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Oh man, I still can't get over how bad this one was. Long before Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny was released, rumors ran rampant that the long-awaited sequel was going to do the thing and introduce time travel to the franchise for the very first time. And indeed, the titular trinket is coveted by the villainous Jürgen Voller, Mads Mikkelsen, who ultimately plans to use it to travel back to 1939, assassinate Adolf Hitler, and lead Germany to victory in World War II. Much of the film teases the notion of time travel, though it isn't until the third act that it actually finally happens, with Voller, Indy, and their respective associates ending up at the Siege of Syracuse in 212 BC. What follows is by far the most entertaining sequence in the entire movie, and quite arguably the single most bad-fit scene from any Indiana Jones film. But again, it's a tiny sliver of the movie, lasting mere minutes, with the script instead far more interested in focusing on how miserable Indiana Jones has become since the last movie, and with a particularly obnoxious Phoebe Waller-Bridge for good measure. Number 7. Vampires as toxic bosses. Renfield. Now, Renfield certainly isn't an awful movie, but damn it had the potential to be so much better than it turned out. The setup, honestly, is quite ingenious, taking the relationship between Count Dracula and his servant Renfield and reimagining it through the contemporary lens of a toxic employer-employee dynamic. And most of the material between Nicolas Cage's Dracula and Nicholas Holt's Renfield is actually pretty good. It's just a shame that half the movie is stolen away by a hugely disinteresting cops and crooks subplot involving a cop and mobster played by Awkwafina and Ben Schwartz respectively. As a consequence, the focus is constantly shifted away from the two focal characters, ensuring that a nevermore game Cage, which is really saying something, doesn't get nearly enough time to shine as Dracula. It feels like a studio executive had a Renfield script and a buddy cop comedy script and decided to smash them together because reasons. The result of which is this bizarre amalgam that does justice to neither concept. Number 6. Mute protagonist seeks revenge. Silent Night. Going by its trailer, Silent Night should have been a unique riff on director John Woo's signature heroic bloodshed brand of no-nonsense action cinema. He is literally the greatest action filmmaker of all time alongside John McTiernan in my books, so this should have been a home run. The concept itself is certainly a doozy. Joel Kinnaman stars as a guy called Brian Godlock, a father seeking to avenge his son's murder by a gang in a drive-by shooting. The kicker? Well, Brian himself is shot in the neck while pursuing his son's killers, leaving him with damaged vocal cords and unable to speak. And so, Brian becomes a mute action hero, with the majority of the film unfolding entirely wordlessly. It's an extremely intriguing premise on paper to see how a preeminent action filmmaker and talented lead actor can reinvent a conventional genre template by taking dialogue out of the question. Because Brian can't speak, nobody in the movie does, not even Brian's wife, as makes for more than a few unintentionally comedic exchanges in their home. This is a colossal squandering of a compellingly creative idea and a brilliant cast and crew. Number 5. It's a Wonderful Life, a slasher movie. It's a Wonderful Knife. I don't know if you've noticed, but recently it's become something of a trend for slasher movies to reimagine classic films. There was the recent Totally Killer, for instance, which reinvented Back to the Future as a horror flick with solidly decent results. And on paper, a slasher version of holiday classic It's a Wonderful Life could have been an absolute blast. Yet ultimately, it's clear that somebody cooked up the title first and then realized they actually had to write the movie. The brilliantly titled It's a Wonderful Knife follows Winnie Carruthers, a depressed young woman who, upon wishing she'd never been born, ends up being transported to a parallel universe where she never existed, and a serial killer known as the Angel is terrorizing her town. It's a cute concept, but between the ropey internal logic of the situation, the underwhelming, not Christmassy enough kills, and a clunky third act twist, It's a Wonderful Knife doesn't get close to achieving its full title potential. Number 4. Willem Dafoe's one-man show, Inside. Though it received curiously little attention when it was released last year, Inside rocked one hell of an attention-grabbing setup. Willem Dafoe stars as Nemo, an art thief who finds himself locked inside a luxury Manhattan penthouse when his latest job goes horribly wrong. And given that Inside takes place entirely inside said apartment, it affords the great Dafoe an enviable opportunity to deliver one hell of a one-man show, as his Nemo gradually loses his mind amid the isolation. But the truth, honestly, is that despite a heroic effort from Dafoe, Inside is ultimately a stamina-drainingly tedious affair. The experiment is laudable, but the script is too spare and the pacing too slack that not even Dafoe's compulsively compelling appeal can carry it through its over-egged 105-minute runtime. Number 3. Dracula on a boat. The Last Voyage of the Demeter. Much as it might seem like low-hanging fruit to adapt a single chapter from Bram Stoker's Dracula, The Captain's Log, into a feature film of its own, the premise is actually pretty damn irresistible, which is why the film's writer tried for 20 years to get it made. What if the crew of a merchant ship discovered that Count Bloody Dracula was on board and slaying his way through the crew? You know, like Alien, only the alien wants to suck your blood. Terrible, terrible Dracula impression, I'm so sorry. Anyway, Dracula on a boat sells itself pretty damn easily. Yeah, despite solid performances, high production values, a killer Dracula design, The Last Voyage of the Demeter is a bit of a slog. What should have been a lean slasher movie is distended out into a low-energy 2-hour endurance trial that's depressingly low on Dracula and extremely padded out by the interpersonal drama of the ship's crew. Do yourself a favor and just get the 4K of Coppola's Dracula instead, because that film is a gorgeous tapestry. Number 2. Superhero body swap. The Marvels. Given that the Marvel Cinematic Universe's output has suffered from a major poverty of imagination in recent years, a Captain Marvel sequel fashioned as an homage to body swap comedies like Freaky Friday seemed like it could be a major breath of fresh air. While it's worth pointing out that The Marvels technically isn't a body swap movie, given that the 3 focal superheroes just swap places, not bodies, the spirit of the concept is nevertheless totally adjacent. But though the marketing suggested that this gimmick would be a major focus of the movie, it's ultimately only deployed when it's convenient for the story. It ends up feeling like an undercooked missed opportunity. Even if you forgive the utter lack of consistency regarding the rules of when the trio swap places, there's desperately little creativity to the swapping itself, bar a few nifty combat beats here or there. And number 1. What if artificial wombs existed? The Pod Generation. Pod Generation premiered at last year's Sundance Film Festival and certainly touted quite the tantalizing hook, taking place in a future New York where couples can now gestate their babies in artificial external wombs, or pods. It goes without saying that such an invention would vastly change childbirth, not to mention gender dynamics, yet Sophie Bartez's defanged satirical sci-fi doesn't get close to digging into the meat of its fascinating subject. Despite solid performances from Chiwetel Ejiofor and Emilia Clarke, the script mostly feels like a smattering of neat ideas that nobody bothered to shape into a consistently engaging narrative. It's a damn shame, as with a more focused screenplay, say one penned by Charlie Kaufman, this could have been an intriguing window into a possible future for humanity. Instead, it came and went without making a dent.